Okay, what a game. The WNBA finals have wrapped up, and I am going to go through everything. This video will almost be like a stream of consciousness, almost like a post game radio show, if you like. So it might not be the best edited and things like that, but I just want to get it out in real time as best I can. Think of it as a podcast, maybe. I'm not sure. The things we'll go through. I want to take a look at the MVP debate. I dedicate that segment to Larry. The other thing, I just want to go through the stat sheet, and we might play a bit of game with Blame Pie as well. We might have a coaching section on that and a bit of blame pie on both coaches, actually. One just got luckier than the other. The other thing is a bit of future forecasting, looking at who's under contract next season for the Aces and for the Liberty and just where it is at. We are also going to look at the last play Sandy Brondello drew up. Should UNESCO, yes, UNESCO, not UNESCO, I apologize. Should UNESCO, I probably mispronounced it again, and I don't give a damn. Should they have called a timeout, and was the play Brondello drew up, did it have issues, and the help defense was amazing on that. So we're going to go through all of this. First, let's start with the MVP debate. I promised Larry, who I dedicate this segment to. If you're not aware, after the Liberty beat the Sun, I did a video basically crushing Alyssa Thomas, calling her a whiner and saying all wonderful things, and how Breanna Stewart proved that she was the true MVP. Or basically, I said she was number one on the list. And I, rewatch the video if you want, or watch it if you want. It sort of goes in the end. What will happen when when Breanna Stewart faces off with Asia Wilson? In the Alyssa Thomas video, I was sort of trying to say that Alyssa Thomas had a chance for the Hakeem Olajuwon moment where he went into David Robinson's house and showed everybody who the real MVP was in the final. And damn it, I just did that video just too early. I should have saved that for this series, because that's exactly what happened here. Is basically Asia Wilson went into Breanna Stewart's house and let everybody know who the true MVP is. And essentially, with all the injuries that the Aces have, as obviously Parker had been out, and as well with Gray going out and not Kia Stokes, she was a one-man band up front in the forwards, and she handled both Stewart and Jones and manhandled the boards. Played massive defense, and basically the stats don't lie. So if you look at Wilson, she went 11 for 21, scoring 24 points. She was +1. And then Stewart, there's no way around it. I mean, you can say it's bad luck or whatever, but she went 3 of 17 from the field with 10 points. She was +2. And, it's fair to say nothing that she put up could go in. But it's a big moment. That's what she's expected to do. And she did not get it done head to head. And I think Wilson was obviously disappointed when she did not win the MVP. And, she's gone in there and shown everybody who the best player is in the WNBA, as the Aces were no doubt wounded and crawling to the finish, and she willed them over the finish line. The other heroes for the Aces, obviously Clark. Kayla George came up. She did just enough. She went 4 for 14. That last pass she made to Wilson, she got the ball there. Wilson made a hell of a play. And then Stewart, and I think it was Jones, and I think it was UNESCO as well that got in. Hell of a block. That's just a good play all around, and you can't have any arguments for that. But Kayla George held up well. She made a few big shots and just did enough as well. Jackie Young, she was able to get to the bucket, and that sort of saved them. She really couldn't get a hell of a lot to drop from outside. Well, she was 2 for 6 from 3-point range, but it looked like she could get to the basket when she needed to. The one that was saved by Asia Wilson was Kelsey Plum. I mean, she was about to go down as the GOAT if they would have lost this game. So she did not have a good game. She went 2 for 12 from the field, could not get anything to drop. And then she got, when they were trying to put the game away, she got her pocket picked by Vandersloot. It was pretty cold. And it, she had a tough game. She would be very relieved that Wilson and the other ones picked her up. So between Plum and Young, when I previewed this, I was like, this is their chance to shine and say, hey, we are stars on our own right. Did they really do that? Not really. They played well. They're great players. Don't get me wrong, but they are they are playing to Asia Wilson's band. Like she is the star, and everything revolved around Asia Wilson. Young could get to the basket, but I will say this, and we'll get this to the end. The thing that makes them special is their defense, and that's what won them through, especially on the last play, which we'll break down in a little bit. Now, with the Liberty, nobody was a massive GOAT in this game. I mean, the one you would point to is Stewart. I mean, she cannot go 3 for 17, and that was the big hole. But their guards held up pretty damn well. Vandersloot went 7 for 16. I know she missed the last 3-point attempt, but when we break that down, I mean, it was a tough shot as she was sort of stepping away. Ionescu, she did well. She hit big shots in the end, and they held up all right. They were still trying to pick on her on defense. On New York's last play, they brought her up into the pick and roll and tried to isolate her, but New York brought the double team to save it. But we'll get to that in a second. Laney was good. I mean, Laney's damn. She was probably New York's most consistent, strongest player. Jones 3 for 8, and I guess that's something going forward. Is Jones is a free agent after the season, and how Stewart is Stewart's a free agent, so they can core one of these players. But how did Breonna Stewart and Jonquel Jones work together? It was sort of a work in progress. It reminds me of the Miami Heat when they had the big three and sort of the growing pains of that first series where they lost and everybody trying to find their roles and how they would fit together. And to be fair, I think that is why Stewart's numbers have suffered a bit because she has to give up a bit in her game and room to operate so that she fits in with Jones. And that was always going to be the question, who was going to have to give. And I think Stewart's done that. But right now, it didn't work as well because really they needed a big game from them to destroy the Aces up front, and that just did not happen. In terms of blame Pie for losing the series, I would have to go New York Liberty backcourt. I mean, the only reason they were in this series was because of the injury to Gray, which gave them a shot. Vandersloot and Ionescu were outclassed by them. Johannes had the one great game in game one where she got hot, but other than that, they had nothing else. And that was the one thing that they suffered from the trade that they made to get Jones. And in some ways, I mean, it's all hindsight is 50-50, obviously. But would New York have been better? Would New York have been better with Laney, Stewart, Rebecca Allen, who they traded to the Sun for Jones, and then Vandersloot and Ionescu? Would that have given them a little bit more defense, what they needed, and that in another sort of look versus having Jones? It's a question that can't be answered, but I wonder if that team, they would have gotten more out of that team, and then you could have brought, because you would have had enough up front, because then you would have had Thornton and Dullison as your bigs you could have brought in, and it would have given that team more flexibility. But I think it's pretty clear Stewie wanted Jones to be there to do some of the heavy banging, and I think that's how they got Stewart, by trading for Jones. So I'm not saying the Liberty did anything wrong, but I'm just wondering if that lineup of Laney, Stewart, Allen, Vandersloot, Ionescu would have been more formidable with Thornton, Dullison coming off the bench. Obviously, for the Aces, there is no blame pie. They are just celebrating their champagne and winning. Oh, God, the post game. I don't know if you've seen the post game, but they did the usual thing if nobody respected us or believed in us and blah, 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 blah. It's so grating because everybody believed in the Aces. You couldn't get a good bet on them because they were such a heavy favorite. Of course, people wondered if they were going to be able to win it when they lost Gray, arguably their best player or one of their two best players. So, but anyway, drink wine, celebrate. You deserve it because you were the best. Now the coaches blame pie. Now, first off, I Hammond's great. She does everything. Like she's a damn good coach. The one thing I would have questioned or I thought that she got wrong was at the end when they were trying to ice the game. They had Jackie Young up top, and they brought the pick to get Ionescu on Jackie Young, and New York went to double. Now I'll probably use just like screen clips of this. When New York went to double, Young threw it to the right, and then I can't remember who on the right, but they made a skip pass across to I think it was Colston, Colson, sorry, who had an open look 3-pointer, but right then Hammond had already started to call a timeout, so she called a timeout with 3 seconds left that took away an open look. Now Colson followed through on the shot and she missed it, so I guess you would say she did the right thing. But that was not a great timeout. Plus, that was their last timeout to use. That really could have bit them in the bum, to be quite honest. But to her credit, she drew up the play. They got a good look at the basket because Kayla George threw a hell of a pass. And my God, Asia Wilson should be like a tight end as well. She went up, she grabbed it, and it was just a hell of a defensive play, hell of an offensive play. That was one of the best things I saw in the game. And then the next thing, New York gets the rebound. Ionescu brings it down. And then she pulls the ball out with 8 seconds, and they call a timeout. Now, it's easy to say from the cheap seats here. It's frantic, and nobody knows what the hell they're doing. But I thought right there when she pulled it out and sort of went up, I thought she had a perfect handoff opportunity to like work a dribble handoff with Stewart going downhill to the basket. And that would have been a much better attempt, but I understand them wanting to go and set it up. But when you call the timeout, when Brondello called the timeout, that allowed New York, or not New York, but that allowed the Aces to get Kayla George off the court, get their best defensive team and set up. And they blew up the pick that they were trying to set with Laney trying to set. And it just got really ugly because first, the play they set up, first they had the screen set for Vandersloot to go run through. Obviously, they weren't going to give the ball to Vandersloot. And then Laney comes up and sets the pick for Stewart, and Brondello said, make sure you don't get called on a moving screen. She still moved anyway. She did a moving screen. No ref is going to call a moving screen in Game 4 of the WNBA final. At least I don't think so. And then, but they got the ball to Stewart, but it wasn't a great act. I would have run Stewart off like a double stagger screen or something like that. And the other thing, I would have had Jones maybe setting one of those screens so she would have the option to dive, and that's what I would have done because I didn't think Jones was involved enough in the play, and that's what but ultimately they did get it to Stewart, but you could tell she was uncomfortable. She drew it to the middle, and this is where the Aces defense was great because you can see early on Jackie Young is glued. She was glued to her man, and Plum was glued to Vandersloot, and then and then as Stewart drove, what happened was it was a great double by Jackie Young. She dropped quickly and double teamed it, but even better was Plum, who was in the corner on Vandersloot, rotated damn fast to Laney, I think it was, and then they rotated the ball to Vandersloot in the corner, and Jackie Young got back and closed off on the corner damn fast, and that's That's what Kelsey Plum and Jackie Young give you, is just that athleticism just makes a difference because they recovered so quickly. And that was the difference between these two teams, in my opinion, was the athleticism of the guards that allow you to play defense. And that is why they ultimately, and I thought it was telling that they won the game on that last defensive rotation because New York could not guard anything their backcourt. And that was ultimately the difference between the two teams. And as well, Stewart did not stand as tall as Wilson. You know, you need your stars to play big in the big games. And ultimately, in this game, it was Wilson's game and not Stewart's game. Now, let's take a look at the future first for New York. If you're not aware, so Jonquel Jones, she's an unrestricted free agent. Breanna Stewart is an unrestricted free agent. You know, are they going to be able to sign a deal with one of these and then use the core on the other player, or what is their plan? Stephanie Dolson is, so the only ones coming back that's easier is Laney and Vandersloot are both signed for 2024 as well. Kayla Thornton and UNESCO. UNESCO's actually, well, Laney signed till 2025, so that's good. She's basically 180K next season, 85K, and 2025. UNESCO's on 200K next season, roughly, and 208K in 25. And then Kayla Thornton's on like 110K next season and 112K in 2025. So they have some decisions to make. They need to get more athletic in the backcourt, and that's going to be tough because their two guards are signed. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see what they do. Are they bringing everybody back and getting the gang to come back again? Dolson was on 160. I can't imagine they're going to bring her back at that number because, especially if they get Jones back, obviously they're not going to do that. But they've got a lot of decisions to make, and they need to get more athletic in the backcourt. Now, for the Aces, the key thing is the core four is signed all for next season. So you got Asia Wilson at 2K, you got Kelsey Plum at 2K, you got Chelsea Gray at 196K, and Jackie Young at 169K. As well, they've got Alicia Clark signed through to next season at 110K. I don't know if they're going to get Candace Parker back again on the cheap for 100K or whatever. Kia Stokes is a free agent as well. So those are the ones that are back. You know, I wonder how they get these players on such cheap contracts. I wonder. Yes, that's not a nice shot, is it, Aces? But the good news for you is, you know, I was set early in the season to call you the asterisk champion and everything else. You know, the Aces are such a big winner tonight. They won in every way with the injury and everything else. Nobody can take any shots at the Aces. They lost Parker early on. You know, if Parker would have played and they would have blown out New York, then sure as hell I would have been calling them cheaters and the asterisk champions like my Astros. And, you know, so what? They had the best roster. They were supposed to win. You know, I'd probably be complaining they didn't win by enough points. So what they did, unbelievable. And they're the ultimate winners as well. I better say this or I'll get crushed as well. The other big winner, again, I said Asia Wilson is the big winner. She's the MVP, but a massive win for the South Carolina Gamecocks because I gave Stewie and UConn so much shine when they beat AT and saying how wonderful UConn was and everything else, and that's why she was the player she was. Well, South Carolina represented. Dawn going to the game, you know, the hug that Staley gave Wilson after the game, just perfect. It was a massive win for Wilson and UConn Nation and their family, and just saying, yeah, that's why you go to UConn, because Dawn Staley has your back and is worried for you as a pro. So that was just a giant advertisement. You know, I wonder, you know, Strong's probably watching that right now and saying, yep, UConn, that's where I'm going. Although she did visit UConn this weekend when they had the you know, the Midnight Madness thing or whatever the hell UConn calls it. So anyway, ultimately the Aces are winning. They were braggadocious in the press conference. If you haven't watched the press conference, like if you have League Pass, you need to watch the press conference. At one point, it is so great. The the moderator of the press conference seems to get annoyed because the Aces are just playing up and partying, and Wilson is like burping and belching, and I don't know if she was drunk yet, but she was well on her way, and it was great just listening to the WNBA moderator. Just, he almost wanted to cut it short, and they said, no, we're here to answer questions.
You should.
All right,
It's a lot.
Aces
Don't cry your lashes off. It's a lot.
All right, to our Aces players, thank you. To our media, thank you.
Oh, damn, he ain't even let me finish.
Answer the question. Can we talk?
All right, we've got about 72 people with questions. If you want to stay, we'll do it. Otherwise, we'll finish.
She didn't even finish her answer.
We would like to answer some questions.
Out of here.
But
And you could tell he just thought it was dangerous and wanted to be done with it. The other big winner is the WNBA. You know when you go to a great movie and you're like, man, I wish this movie wouldn't end. This movie is so... I'm behind the times. I watched Breaking Bad just recently with my daughter. So I apologize. It was 5 years ago, but I watched it and we got to the last episode and I'm like, damn, this is the last episode. I don't want this thing to end. And that's what I was like for this series. I was like, in a way I was rooting for New York just so we could get a game 5 and see what happens. But it was the best result in some ways because the WNBA had nothing's on Wednesday night. So they had everything to themselves, and I'll keep on pushing. They need to move or shorten the season so that the finals go on before Labor Day so they are not battling football. If this thing would have been on during prior to Labor Day, they would have gotten massive numbers, I reckon. It is just stupid for them to have the WNBA finals against football, but others might have other opinions on that. But overall, those are my opinions on this game. Again, I warned you it was a stream of consciousness. Your thoughts, your poison, it's all welcome. Thanks a lot for watching. Now it's on to college basketball. I'm going to try to put out as much content as I can. And as well, I'm going to keep my eye on free agency. And anyway, thanks again and have a great night.